This is Your Other Brothers Podcast.
Fear, you're not my lover, you're not my friend, you're not my brother. Oh, and no, there's no room here. There's a vacancy in my heart, but it ain't for fear.
Welcome, friends, to Your Other Brothers Podcast, navigating faith, homosexuality, and masculinity together. From the Jewel of the Blue Ridge, a controversial Jewel of the Blue Ridge. We're going to get to that in a moment. But my name is Tom, and I am so glad that you guys are all here. Joining me today from the City of Oaks, from his new office, it's Ryan. What's up, Ryan?
Greetings.
Wow.
Yes, I have a new office, but the people listening can't see it. Sorry.
This is where the video medium is extremely helpful. So we're going to make sure your office gets... Because it's, from what I can see, I haven't seen it in person yet, but from what I see on my little, 6 by 10 inch screen, like, it's beautiful. It's magnificent.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It still needs to be decorated and everything, so don't launch the video pivot till I can do that.
Okay. Very nice. And joining us again from the folksy tundra of Minnesota, it's our other brother, Aaron. What's up, Aaron?
Hello, the folksy tundra. I like that. I'm gonna have to start using that around here for the locals.
See if it catches on. Yeah, it's got a lot of syllables in it, but I think once we get past those bumps of saying it out loud, I think it rolls. So it's good to have both of you guys here today as we talk about something that I can't believe hasn't been a topic yet. It's like referenced fairly frequently, most notably in our Christmas episode. Not of this past year, sadly. I completely forgot. But faithful listeners will remember the Christmas episode of 2019 where I brought love language gifts for my co-hosts. It's something that's still I still hear about it to this day. It's in Yob lore. It's officially Yob lore now. But we're talking about love languages as explicitly as possible, as focused as possible today in a way that we never have. And specifically tying it into our sexualities. How do gift givings emerge with our sexuality? That is the big question that we are going to answer here today. So I'm excited for Ryan and Aaron to talk about this, not just gifts, but all the other love languages as well, made popularized by old Gary Chap, as I like to call him. He wrote a book. He's written there's I think 25 books about love languages for every type of human: singles, marrieds, dating, military. I mean, it's like every category of human you can think of. So we're going to talk about it. Now, finally, he hasn't written the book on side B, SSA, gay Christian folk, but we're going to bridge that gap here today. So Gary Chap, if you're listening, this one's for you.
Come on for a follow-up. We'll interview you.
Could you imagine interviewing Gary Chapman on the show?
So I haven't read any of your 25 books. But we talk about love languages a lot. I'm probably getting it all wrong, but...
Yeah. I think 95% of us have no idea what we're talking about when we talk about love languages, because I've never read the books. Have you guys read any of his 5 love languages books?
No.
Okay.
We took his quiz.
We took a 5-minute quiz, so we are thoroughly prepared for this conversation. Yeah, I feel like that's how it is with love languages. I feel like nobody's actually read, even though he has all these books, I feel like nobody's actually read them. I don't know that I've met somebody who has actually told me, oh yeah, I was reading, after I read this in the love languages book. No, it's just what are your love languages? We all kind of know what our top 2 or 3 are, and then that's kind of the point of the conversation. But we're going to try to go deeper today, and I think I'm excited to see what comes of this episode. So Ryan, Aaron, congratulations. Along with the rest of humanity, we reached the end of the pandemic, you guys. Did you hear that?
Some of us have.
Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I need to bring it up because like here in America, as this conversation's recording, the CDC made this huge announcement that if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear masks anymore. And like all around the country, businesses are like stripping their mask mandate. And so it's been very strange. And I wanted to get y'all's feedback on this because this has been such a part of our lives now. Like I just have a mask in my car at all times. I have one at my door to grab on the way out sometimes. And it's been such a commonplace thing in my life as it is for so many people listening. And it's bizarre to me now because I was actually just out today in some various establishments and people are not wearing masks. And where I live, in happy, progressive little Asheville, I have never encountered any issues. Everyone is so cooperative. Everyone wears their masks. I haven't seen any Karens in any of the stores going crazy about having to wear a mask because they have a medical condition that they don't actually have or whatever the reasons may be. But all of a sudden, you guys, I'm going to places where people are not wearing masks and it's very jarring. And I'm still wearing mine, even though I am fully vaxxed. And I don't know, like, it's become a comfort item to me now. Like I kind of like hiding half of my face. I'm worried about the psychological damage now that this has done to me because it just feels comfortable and normal now to wear a mask when I go inside places where germs of any kind are just sprinkled about everywhere. So I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on this. How are you dealing in a post-mask America?
Well, apparently Asheville is cutting edge on this because Raleigh, I have not. None of the businesses I frequent has relaxed their mask restrictions yet. So I'm still wearing a mask to the grocery store and Costco and anywhere else. Although, okay, I did go to this very divey sports bar in the middle of nowhere the other night, and there were people there in like construction uniforms and stuff like that. And there were no masks at all. But it wasn't really clear that it was like recently lifted or if this place just never ever like had masks.
Yeah, that's debatable.
Yeah, it felt a little weird to just like look around and no one's wearing masks, to like walk up to the bartender and like speak like 2 feet away from her face and just let my breath gusts hit her
gusts
right in the nose
of breath. I feel like I can almost imaginary see people's particles now. Like when I see people talk, I'm like, no, there's particles coming out. But it is jarring. Yeah. How are things in the folksy tundra? I feel like in Minnesota, the masks were probably utilitarian for most of the winter because it's like an extra layer of warmth for your face, right?
It was kind of handy. I'm not going to lie. Normally people just wear ski masks. So if they need to, if it's that cold out. So it wasn't necessarily unusual to see somebody inside a grocery store or a bank or something with their face covered or a ski mask on. But having the mask built in has been kind of handy. The only downside is I got glasses right before the pandemic started. And so I joined the club very quickly of people who were constantly fogging up their glasses. And that was kind of a hassle. But we did get rid of our mask mandate. Functionally, nothing has really changed because most stores still have the requirements. So, I saw somebody posting on Facebook and they're like, hey, there's no more mask mandate, but I went to Target and I had to wear a mask in the grocery store and had to wear a mask in some other place and had to wear a mask. So I think businesses are still catching up, but it depends where you go to. I think as you get further outside the city, people are a little more eager to have their mask off and establishments are going to be more relaxed. I will say people need to get used to smiling again and having their smile be seen.
It's the worst.
I was going through a drive-through with my brother and the person there was not wearing a mask, which this was like the first time I saw somebody working somewhere not wearing a mask. And she was smiling like way too big. And her eyes were not smiling at all. It was all on her mouth and it just kind of looked a little creepy and strange. So I think people are out of practice and maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's especially funny because our president said something to the effect of like, now Americans can do what we're best at or something strange, like smiling. Yeah. That's what we're best at. And because in my head, this is another issue. Like I love talking to myself. I don't know if we have any other self-talkers,
Yeah.
but I have constantly been going through a grocery store with all the ambient noise around. So it's not like I'm like talking like I am now, but like walking through the aisles and I'm like whispering to myself, okay, what do I need? I need cereal, like granola. And I like feel no pressure. Like I let it out. Like it helps me. I'm a verbal processor. I need to say things out loud to like know what I'm doing. It gets in my head, like my head is a labyrinth, you guys. There's all kinds of caverns and places things go. So talking things out is helpful for me legitimately, but I feel now incredibly more self-conscious going to the grocery store. Like Trader Joe's, one of my favorite places to go shop. They opened up their mask mandate, but I honestly think when I go get food later this week, I think I'm going to keep the mask on. I don't think I'm going to let go of it. At least not right now. Like I'm easing into this. This is like this weird middle period where like the pandemic is still going, but things are getting better. And I don't know. It's just what a time to be alive, you guys. There'll never be another time like this.
So I'll tell you what the mask has been masking on my face, besides my breath gusts. So sometimes I'll just walk around with my tongue just sort of like halfway out, like sort of like
a dog.
Like just sort of blept a little bit out like a cat. And this especially happens when I'm like really when I just feel kind of gross because I like ate a lot or just didn't sleep well or something like that, or haven't been exercising a lot.
It's like opening the exhaust port or something, like having some
a little
ventilation or something.
Or sometimes if I'm just like stressed out, I don't know, like it serves a variety of purposes, I suspect, but I can't just walk around like that without a mask on anymore. That's going to be hard to get used to.
Yeah, the weird, creepy smiles, self-talkers, sticking out your tongue, unshaven, just like weird facial hair happening. I feel like there's a lot of surprises to come, you guys. So stay tuned for your local grocery stores and banks and Targets and wherever else people go. This will be fun to see what we all look like again, you guys. What a banner time to be alive.
The good news is I think the bar is pretty low now. We've managed to set a pretty low bar after months or years of sitting at home in our pajamas.
I mean, who remembers what it was like previously? I don't.
Right. It's gotten so bad that I will watch TV shows and I'm seeing the characters like close together. I'm like, they are not distancing. Where are their masks? And these are fictional worlds of like in a pre-pandemic. They're not even real. It's just like it's kind of messed with me. Like,
or you see two characters shake hands and you're like,
heavens, yeah, what are you doing? Yeah, it's crazy. So I don't know. I hope our listeners are doing well, surviving and getting through this weird, awkward. This is our teenage years of the pandemic. Post-demic, that's kind of fun to say. I don't know. But we're getting there, you guys. One awkward encounter at a time. Well, you guys, I hinted at it at the top of the show, controversially, that I'm in the Jewel of the Blue Ridge. I have something to share with you guys, how fun this is. My pastor sent me a text message last week, and he did a little video recording of a commercial that he saw on television for Madison County, North Carolina, which is the county above the one where I reside. So maybe a solid 30, 45 minutes beyond Asheville, which is what I've affectionately called the Jewel of the Blue Ridge since this podcast's inception. Just for reasons. I love this place, and I've always called it the Jewel of the Blue Ridge. But my pastor sent me this clip, this commercial from Madison County. I'm going to play it for Ryan, for Aaron, for the whole world to hear. And then we're going to analyze. We're going to analyze what happens. So let's play the clip. Roll the clip. If I had an intern, that's what I would say to them.
Every day is exceptional in Jewel of the Blue Ridge. Come make memories that can't be matched in Madison County.
So Madison County is referring to itself as the Jewel of the Blue Ridge, you guys. And I looked into this. It's true. This is what they are calling themselves. I don't know when it started. I haven't gotten that far yet as far as figuring out when this nickname even started. But I'm either like really proud of myself or really appalled right now. And I don't know which one. I don't know which one to be. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to do with this information. If suddenly, well, the city of Oaks, that is what Raleigh is called, right, Ryan? That's not something we made up. That is
It's a
actually
thing, yeah.
it is a thing. But if Minneapolis or the great state of Minnesota, if they start calling themselves the folksy tundra somewhere in their advertising and their marketing, then I'm gonna have some questions to ask somebody. I don't know who, but but I thought that was worth sharing. Thank you to my pastor for picking that out. And more on this story as it develops, because I'm going to look into this and try to figure out which council members suggested this or how long this nickname has been in effect. Because I swear I did not know this existed prior to naming Asheville the Jewel of the Blue Ridge like 4 years ago.
So
I don't know.
So are you like happy about this, or do you feel like threatened, like like they're stepping on your toes?
That's what I was saying. I don't know.
Compensation.
Okay.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't know what to feel. Like, should I feel happy feelings? Should I feel anger feelings? Maybe I need to talk to my therapist about this? Like, I don't know. I'm trying to sift through, like I said, the labyrinth in my head, in my heart. It's helpful to start talking this out because I've been keeping it in for these last several days. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to look into it more. And then if I have more information, I'll reveal it on a future podcast. But yeah, the Jewel of the Blue Ridge, it's Asheville, and apparently it's Madison County. I don't know who all's traveling to that Jewel of the Blue Ridge, but we'll see how well that marketing works for them. So anyway, Madison County, I can't wait. what would be fun is if I go to Madison County and find a sign. There's got to be a sign somewhere that says Jewel of the Blue Ridge. If they're using it in their TV spots, there's got to be like some kind of sign somewhere, the courthouse. I don't know. I'm gonna go on a field trip soon, you guys. So stay tuned. Maybe stay tuned to the Yob Instagram if I can find some signage to again either be elated or angered by. We'll see what happens. We'll see what feeling emerges when I get there. The only other announcement I have, that was like one of my two announcements today. Only other announcement is that every once in a while, because of scheduling, we might just play around with the rhythms of the YOBcast and the ConvoCast. I think in general, what I prefer, just for my own sanity, is kind of going back and forth, flip-flopping between YOBcasts and ConvoCasts. Have a long form and a short form podcast back and forth each month. That's usually what happens. And then with this go around, we kind of had to adjust some things on the schedule. And what happened was we had 2 ConvoCasts come out in a row. And so now the plan is to do 2 YOBcasts in a row to kind of bring balance back to the podcast force, so to speak. So if anyone was confused about the podcast schedule this week and last, that's a little check-in for you guys. So we'll see. My preference is alternating between the 2 shows, but sometimes it might work out better to do 2 short forms in a row or 2 long forms in a row. So we'll just see what the future brings. But had a fantastic conversation last time with one of our beloved community members, Keegan. So if you guys missed that ConvoCast, you can go back and listen to it. I love that episode because, and I mentioned it on the show, because Keegan called in to the YOBcast, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes ago, something like that. And it was really fun. Like, I never had a thought in my head that, oh, he could be a great podcast guest someday. But sure enough, the way the schedule worked and the new introduction of this ConvoCast show, I reached out to him and he was so great to say yes and respond and come on the show. So who knows, maybe other future voicemail leavers will be guests on the show someday. It's a rise to fame here in the Yob universe. So stay tuned. Thanks to Keegan and thanks to everyone who's come on the ConvoCast so far. It's been great to meet so many folks in our community. It's been fun. Speaking of voicemails, not to make this person now a future podcast guest, who knows, but thank you to Logan for calling in to the Yob line. He had to leave a message about something that is near and dear to my heart and to so many of our hearts in this community. And it's a fitting segue for this episode on love languages. He had something to say about the Enneagram, you guys. And so let's play his voicemail. And then I have some thoughts before we talk about love languages.
Hey guys, this is Logan from Lafayette. So shout out to Jacob, fellow Hoosier there. And I had what I hope will be a point of interest on a perennial topic, the Enneagram. I remember taking it in undergrad, but I forgot what score I got. So I decided, since it was a rather frequent topic, to try to look it up. and then I found out why I forgot. So my actual score when I took it last was a dead even score for types 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I scored one less for type 1, one less than that for type 3, and one less than that for types 8 and 9. So, my question to you is, have you ever seen or heard of that before? And Tom in particular wanted to get your take on that. What do you make of that? So, anyway, thanks for all the work you all do, and keep it up.
All right. Well, it's good to hear from someone from the great state of Indiana. We have so many beloved listeners in Indiana. Shout out to the Hoosier State. I think that's what they're called. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that message. I have some thoughts about trying to find your type, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because I know this is an episode about love languages, but we're all about self-awareness here in Your Other Brothers. That's something that I really enjoy about this community, is that there's a lot of people hungering just to learn more about why they are the way that they are. And sexuality is a big part of that, but just figuring out kind of how we're wired, why we are ticking the way that we're ticking. It's such a cool commonality to find among so many people. And I know other people are also like really sick of it. And so there's that. I hear you and I see you as well, a sizable portion of our listenership, of our community. But here's what I would say. If you're stuck between trying to figure out what types you are, my number one advice is always, in anything in life, go to the dark side. Read about all the reasons these types are awful or unhealthy, and then see if it pricks any chords inside of you. Like, oh, that feels really uncomfortable because that feels really true of me when I was stressed out or when I was, cutting off people or whatever. That's always my number one advice, like to kind of, it's nice to look at all the ways these types are beautiful and redeemable and bring beauty to the world. That's great and all. But like, go to the parts where these are the worst people in the world and try to figure out which type aligns with you best. That's how I find it helpful for me to determine that I was a 4, because I went to the dark side of 4 and I was like, yep, that is me. And that is not pretty. It hits a little close to home there.
Yeah, because like in the Enneagram, when we're healthy, we kind of exhibit lots of different characteristics of lots of different types. And so I think healthy people are typically harder to type. So congratulations on that. But like when we're unhealthy, when we're in stress, when we're breaking down, like that's when it tends to get more focused. Like we tend to kind of display like telltale signs of our type in those situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then my number 2 advice, it's starting to get a little deeper into Enneagram. Some people are very surface level, and that's fine. If that's kind of enough information that you need, that's totally fine. No judgment. But I've found that the deeper I go and the more like layers I find to the Enneagram, the more fascinating it gets to me. And so there's something called the stances in Enneagram. Ryan, Aaron, are you familiar with the stances? The 3 stances.
Is this the social, sexual, self-preservation?
No, those are the instincts. There's instincts. Okay. So there's 3 stances, which I listened to some podcasts and I've read some materials. It seems like the stances are the best way to at least narrow down your type to 3. And so I know Logan mentioned he's either a 2, 4, 5, 6, or 7, which are 5 very different types of humans. And so they all fall into these stances. And it really does depend on the stances answer this question. When you want something, how do you tend to act to get it? And so there's 3 stances: the aggressive stance, which are types 3, 7, and 8, the dependent stance, which are types 1, 2, and 6, and the withdrawn stance, which are types 4, 5, and 9. And so all of these stances they're grouped that way because it all hinges on wanting something and how do you respond in order to get what you want. And so basically with the aggressive stance, 3s, 7s, and 8s, they are bold, they're aggressive, assertive to get what they desire, to achieve whatever goals that they set. The dependent stance, 1s, 2s, and 6s are less bold, less assertive. They depend more on relationships to achieve what they want. And then the withdrawing stance, which is proudly represented today by 2/3 of our cast. Withdrawing stance best pursues their goals and desires when they have the chance to be by themselves and away from others, to kind of reflect on what they want and to kind of form more of a plan of attack, so to speak, when they are able to process that. So So my advice, I feel like in general, if you have a decent level of self-awareness, you can probably put yourselves in one of those 3 categories. And then at the very least, you've now narrowed it down to 3. Like you're one of 3 types within each of those stances. And so that would be my advice to Logan, to anyone else who's intrigued by the Enneagram, trying to figure out, go to the dark side first. But then maybe figure out which stance you are if you fit into one of those 3 categories. And then at least you've narrowed it down to 3. And maybe within those 3, you can clearly narrow it down to 2. Because I've had friends over the years who are torn between being a 2 and a 6. And that makes a lot of sense because they're both in the dependent stance. So that's my advice. I hope take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, I found too that when I was going through my Enneagram test, I had 2 that tied for first. I don't remember exactly how the scoring worked. And then I had 4 that tied for second. And they were only like a few points below whatever my first 2 were scored at. So I can commiserate with the difficulty of trying to figure out results from personality tests. I found that was true for Myers-Briggs and a lot of other tests that I took too. Like I just don't come out very clearly, whether because I'm really healthy, like Ryan speculated. I hope that's the case. Or because I'm just really not self-aware. I'm not sure. But for me, what was the most helpful was reading through more of the detailed descriptions and then thinking about, I think, weaknesses, like Tom said, and then also core motivations. So I'm a 6 and I was kind of stuck between a 6 or a 9 and then a whole bunch of them being second. And I think for me, what it came down to was I could see once I spent more time thinking about it that my core motivator was more anxiety focused than it was, peacemaker doing it, in that way. But yeah.
I think the Enneagram is just very hard to test for. Like I kind of wish tests didn't exist because I don't think that people really get I don't think it gives you a good start into the Enneagram starting off with the test. I think it's best to like read through a lot of material about the different types. And I think the more you learn, the more it will become clear, like, oh yeah, this is me.
Yeah, I think the Enneagram, more than anything else, it's really it's on the other end of the spectrum from the love languages test, which I'm about to reveal my results for. Like love language test, I feel like is a lot more bare bones. Like, yeah, do you like hugs? Do you not like hugs? It's like pretty more clear cut versus Enneagram is so deep, it's so layered and nuanced, and there's a lot to it. And so yeah, I think if you start poking around, if you get intrigued, then there's an endless well of things that you can go down, stances and instincts and wings and all kinds of things. And I don't know, it's been a helpful point in my growth just to, again, become more self-aware, realize my patterns, realize what triggers me and what I'm motivated by, as Aaron was saying. So Logan or anyone else listening, if you want to send me an email, I'd love to talk more. I'd love talking about the Enneagram. So feel free to shoot me an email anytime. And I'm sure someday you guys will do an Enneagram podcast. I think that has been something that there's been a groundswell for the last couple of years of doing some kind of an Enneagram podcast. So maybe if this Love Languages podcast goes well, maybe that's something that can emerge sooner than later.
That could be a whole new series in the Your Other Brothers podcast network.
We should just have an Enneagram podcast, honestly. And then we could just like put all of our Enneagram talk on there. And then anyone who's sick of the Enneagram doesn't have to listen to a word of it on the main show.
That would probably be really good, honestly.
So we'll see. Which brings us to our sponsor for this episode on love languages. I honestly feel like there's something missing, you guys. I don't know. This could be a fun YOBcast side segment, but I've always felt like 5 love languages is not enough. There are more categories out there, and for me, humor is a love language. If someone is on the same wavelength with me as far as our sense of humor, like that doesn't necessarily fit into like words of affirmation, or I don't know what that would fit into. So for me, the sponsor of this episode, I'm so delighted. They are the 6th love languages. The 6th love language. Memes are the sponsor for this episode. Or as I used to know them, when I was trying to get hip with the times with internet culture back in the day, I thought they were called memes. I called them memes. So big shout out to memes for sponsoring this episode, because memes are delightful, you guys. They are the best part of the internet. And the internet is a dark, odious despicable place, but memes make the world better. So thank you, memes.
A sponsorship from memes. That's a big get.
That's a big get.
That's like, forget Nike. Like, we're doing great.
Yeah. No. I mean, 100,000 downloads, Ryan. We're getting up there.
Yeah.
We're going
Pair of
some
Thieves
places.
missed the boat. Like, they missed it. They missed
did.
it. We've got
Still
memes
waiting.
now.
I'm still waiting on that phone call. That'll be the day. The day. I mean, we are responsible for some percentage of their sales based on how much we promote their products. I am just astounded that we have not heard from Mr. Pair of Thieves. I don't know what's taking so long, but you guys, let's talk about love languages. I'm really curious to hear. I think we've all taken, Ryan brought a printout, so we all have results from old Gary Chap's website, and we're going to share what our love languages are. My suspicions are they're all going to be very similar, because I think after we share our results, I'll share our Zoom results, because we had a Zoom room last week with our yobbers. And I put a poll out to the 20 people that showed up for that Zoom room. And so I still have those results saved. And so my suspicion is that they'll run similar with the cast here today. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I know Ryan and Aaron pretty well, so I could be wrong. We'll see. We'll see what the tests don't lie, right? We'll see what the test said, what box that Gary Chap put you in. So why don't we go to the Folksy Tundra first? Why don't we go to Aaron? And there's the test. So if you go to 5, we'll put a link into it if people want to, if they just love taking tests like I do. 5lovelanguages.com. There's a free little 5-minute test that you can take, whether you're single or married or whatever the other categories are. So Aaron, do you want to share with us what your top love language is?
I do. I do very much. Yeah, my top love language is physical touch. And I believe this was true when I first took the love language test, I don't know, several years ago. Took it again a few days ago, and no big shock. Physical touch is still my number one.
What's the score on that?
Yeah. What's your percentage?
It is 33%.
Okay.
Interesting.
That's a judgy O. Let's go to the City of Oaks. Ryan, what is your top love language, and what's your percentage?
Oh, that wasn't a judgy O, because I also scored top at 33% physical touch.
No kidding.
Oh, so it was like a intriguing O. I thought it was a judgy O.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to be like, oh, mine is 80%. Mine is so dominant. Very interesting. Okay. Because I didn't know how the percentages work. I guess it makes more sense now that I hear what y'all's answers are. Because I was like, what does the percentage mean? But I guess it's all divvied up by 100%. So a third of your love comes through physical touch is essentially what we're going to just decree.
That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
There we go. My number one at 40%, you guys, 40% was quality time. And I think, well, I don't think, I know. I knew that those two would be our top two, both on the cast here today and then also with our Zoom room. Because real quick, let me just run through our poll results from that Zoom room. The most represented from that Zoom call was quality time, with half of the people, so 10 of them had quality time, and then physical touch with 8 people. And then we also had 1 for words of affirmation and 1 for gifts as their top love languages. So that, again, I've noticed in this community, it seems to tilt very heavily toward touch and quality time. I'd be curious to hear the complete rundown now, you guys, as we get to what our least resonant love language is, the one that we could just throw out the window. We don't want it. Get it out of my life. Yeah, Aaron. So what was like? Yeah, your complete rundown.
Yeah. So number one was physical touch with 33%. Coming in at a close second was quality time at 30%.
Okay.
And so that was real close. And then a not so distant third was words of affirmation at 20%. Then acts of service at 13%. And the one that could clearly be thrown away at 3% is receiving gifts.
Oh, poor gifts.
Not that I don't like gifts. People are still welcome to send them my way. But
Not anymore. So words of affirmation and quality time were tied for me for next place at 23%. And then acts of service and receiving gifts were also tied for last place at 10%.
Wow.
I will say, if I had to like throw away one of acts of service or receiving gifts, it would be acts of service, except for rides to the airport. As I'm thinking about it, that's like one act of service that I really, really appreciate.
That is
but other acts of service, I just like, I have a very particular way I like things done, and I just would rather do it my way.
We joked about doing your dishwasher, or that's what I still owe Jacob. I still owe doing his dishwasher. Like,
yeah, if you load my
right.
dishwasher, then after you're gone, I'm unloading it and loading it correctly.
You think you've done something great for him, but you've actually just annoyed him. Really interesting. Yeah, we have very similar results, you guys, because I have tied for second words of affirmation and physical touch at 20%, and then gifts at 17%, and acts of service a solid 3%. That is clearly the one I am chucking out the window. And I have reasons why, tied to my sexuality, masculinity, that I'm excited to share about actually very soon. But it's really interesting because, yeah, it's pretty much in line with our Zoom call as well, according to their... actually, I already read it. So yeah, the lowest ones were words of affirmation and gifts with 1. Acts of service had 0 that people resonated with. So I feel like, again, there are exceptions. There are people that are extremely top in acts of service and gifts and all that listening. So I don't want to make this episode be about making you feel invisible, but I just know that a healthy majority of our community resonate with these kind of top 2. And so I figured that's probably where we'll spend most of our time in this conversation, with quality time and physical touch. But I definitely want to hit on the other 3 as well. I figured we could start out there, you guys, and then kind of work our way up toward the higher billing the love languages that a lot of people in our community seem to share. So yeah, it's going to be a fun conversation because I've never like explicitly thought about the love languages through the lens of my sexuality. It's always just been as Tom, the human, the person, whatever. And so it'll be fun. Like, I've been processing it today, as you guys have as well. So as mentioned, I'm a verbal processor. I need to say things out loud. So I'm curious to see what comes out of my mouth with everything I've been processing about each of these 5. And I want to start out, why don't we just start out with acts of service, because we've kind of started hitting on that already. Does anything come to mind, you guys, when it comes to acts of service and why it's low on all of our lists, why we don't care for it as much as the other types? Because I have something that I could share, and I could potentially start out with that, but I was curious if any of you guys had any thoughts.
I think, I honestly can't think of many times when somebody has like offered me like a significant act of service, like something that I really needed and couldn't do for myself, and it was sort of like meaningful in a loving sort of way. And so it could be as simple as because of my lifestyle, because of my community, because of any number of factors, like I just haven't really experienced it in a way that sort of ignites my heart to say, oh man, I really feel loved right now. Like, I'm so glad that happened.
Right.
I tend to think that a lot of the lack in SSA Christians' lives, whether they're in a mixed orientation marriage or celibate, stem or kind of focuses around more of those close, more interpersonal, intimate moments of feeling validated by other people, and like having needs that can't be met on our own. Like, you can't really give yourself words of affirmation very easily. You can't give yourself physical touch, doesn't mean anything or do anything. Or quality time, right? I mean, you can try, but it's just not the same. Versus...
Somebody didn't listen to the masturbation episode.
I was like, do I say it or do I just let that pass? Thank you, Ryan.
No. But I think like for gifts and acts of service, it comes down to you're sort of able to do those things a little more easily for yourself if you want to.
Yeah, for me, something that I landed on with acts of service is like, I'm just an independent person by default, and so it feels awkward. There's a character flaw in me where it's hard for me to accept help. And I know that's something that a lot of people have. It's not unique to me by any means. So that's part of it. There's an inherent thing in me that just wants to do something, to know how to do something, to be able to do something by myself. And so I feel extremely insecure. And this ties into something like CrossFit, bringing CrossFit into the conversation. Like when I go into a CrossFit gym, when I first joined, I have no idea how to hold the bar or how to squat or how to move my arms in such a fashion. And to be taught that, to be shown that, is ultimately beneficial. It's kind of why I was there, right? To learn things that I didn't know before. But it took a while to it feels like a hit on my masculinity that I don't just inherently know how to do this thing, that this person has to teach me how to do something that I feel like everyone else picks up on maybe a lot more quickly. And I'm someone who learns by doing. So you could show me a schematic, or you could show me diagrams, or you could show me a YouTube video, but unless I'm actually doing it, like I don't really learn it as easily. I'm more of a kinesthetic learner. And so something like that where, and it could be like other things too. Like when I was hospitalized last year, and it was recommended that I don't really go out because my immune system was just super fragile, especially during the pandemic. And so I had friends in town who were getting me groceries, and I kind of just relied on them to go out, buy some groceries for me, because it was just kind of less of a mental headache to have to go out and hold my breath while I'm getting things and trying to survive that way. And it felt like a little bit of a hit on my masculinity there too. Like, man, this is what's happened to my body. I can't even go out and get groceries for myself or do my own laundry or whatever. Like I just felt so at someone else, like I needed another human to help me, which is not my default mode of operation. So in a sense, it was good for me to experience that, because I feel like I'm more apt to receive help than I've ever been after what I've gone through over the last year. But it is still something that just causes me not extreme anxiety, but it's like, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable if someone does something for me, kind of like Ryan's dishwasher example. Like in general, I feel like generally I can do it. Like I have my way of doing things, and that's the way I want to clean my house or set up things or have a schedule for the week. And then when other people are trying to help and chip in, like I see what they're trying to do, but then it just feels like there's a disconnect, because it's just not, it's not what I'm wired to receive. There are other ways to love me. And I just kind of pride myself, maybe to a fault, of doing things my way. So that's kind of what I landed on with that today. It was more so tied to masculinity than sexuality. But I think there's an element too of like men helping me. Like, do you guys have any thoughts on like if a man tries to help you versus, just any old person, a woman, an acquaintance or whatever? Like, do you feel, because I just feel completely, I don't know, just overwhelmed by that, I think.
I feel I sort of imagine many of my straight male friends being kind of standoffish of like receiving help from other men because they feel inadequate. Like it does tie into masculinity, but I think that that's something that I don't get hung up on quite as much. Like if someone comes over and like helps me, if I need help moving furniture around my house, like I don't feel like my masculinity is threatened so much by needing help with that.
Gotcha.
I mean, I think generally for us to say guys, like you're looking for connection to guys, and this is something that could go into a whole podcast of its own, but talking about kind of the different forms of what SSA embodies itself as besides just sexual attraction. Right. I think people, we tend to maybe long for just that affirmation from men and feeling like one of the guys and stuff like that. So I think we're more apt to receive that love from guys, and we want to receive it from guys. And I also think, to Ryan's point, maybe the difference in view of masculinity, where personally, I just feel less like I'm worried about not being man enough by asking for help than I am about, trying to receive that love from my male friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think about things like with not being man enough. Like I'm not like a huge engineer type of person. Like I don't know how wires and things like car stuff and plumbing and electricity. Like I have plenty of people in my family who are extremely gifted in that regard. And so it's so easy for me to feel inferior if that's how I'm judging my masculinity, and kind of how that bleeds into my sexuality of feeling different, set apart from other men. Like I feel it takes the right person if they're trying to teach me something or like help me with something. Like it takes the right kind of the right personality of having like a sense of empathy or a sense of just like not feeling above me, but like working with me alongside me. Like it takes which again, it's grateful. All of these love languages, like if you're somebody who's really great at it, like then I think I can respond well to each of these. Like some of them are easier, more natural for me to respond to. But if there's an acts of service person who's just really good at it and really empathic and really just kind and caring and willing to work with me to do something, I think that's a huge thing. And like Ryan, that was an amazing example. Airport rides, like that, what an act of service to be able to have someone who can pick you up or drop you off. Like I've been blessed by many a friend over the years to do that. And that's a huge one.
Yeah. And I'm incredibly not handy. And so we have a house and we had to put gutters on, and had somebody out here, I don't know, a few weeks ago now, who was giving me an estimate on gutters, looking around the place, telling me where I did need gutters, where maybe I could get by without them. And there was one spot right in front of our garage door, and it was just a tiny little strip. And he's like, I don't think it makes sense to put a gutter here and a downspout and everything. It's a lot of money. And you really just need the water to come out maybe another foot from the garage door so it doesn't go under. He's like, if you're handy, you could just get a ladder. You could run up there quick, put a little sheet of metal in underneath here. And he's describing all the ways to do it without damaging my shingles. And I just stopped and looked at him and went, what if I'm not handy? And he just kind of laughed and was like, okay.
And no.
Well, I will be out here sometime in the next few weeks. You'll just see me in my truck, and I'll come out and I'll take care of it for you, free of charge and stuff. And I thought that was really funny, but it was actually, that was a great example of an act of service that I really did appreciate. And he just came out and did it for free and was very helpful. But yeah,
shout out to that guy. That's nice.
I know.
The joys of home ownership. I'm sure Ryan's dealt with many a gutter over the years.
Well, and now you pretty much have to take his quote, his estimate, right? Like,
oh yeah,
somebody else
that
comes
sealed
back.
the deal.
Yeah,
it was a good sales tactic.
Very nice.
If nothing else.
Well, that's acts of service, you guys. Why don't we talk about gifts now? Because, okay, when I was thinking about gifts today, I think, even though gifts were 17%, they weren't the lowest for me. Acts of service was the lowest at 3%. I think gifts, though, is more stressful to me because I think there's more of a hit or miss quotient with gifts. Like if the gift doesn't land, I'm just I don't know what to do with that. Receiving gifts, is tricky for me. And then giving gifts, like Christmas time and birthdays and whatever times you're supposed to give gifts, like I just hate that. I hate it when those times come around because I'm like, what do I give? Other than a gift card, just like, let's just really remove all of the emotion from a gift and just like make it straight cash. Like I struggle, like every once in a while when the stars align with the right person, I can think of a really great gift for somebody, but more often than not, that is not the case. I just am not wired that way to inherently know either ahead of time or in the moment spontaneously, like know what someone would really love and to be able to then get that for them. But then when they get something for me, again, when people are wired this way, it's fantastic. I have so many like art pieces, decor pieces that have been gifts over the years, and people who are just really wired and they know what I like and they know kind of my motif and my look and feel, my vibe. Like if they know me and they're good at it, then I love getting gifts from those people. So that's all great, rolling great. But how do you guys feel? In general, I know we all ranked gifts pretty low. Like what are y'all's feelings on gifts and how it may or may not tie to your sexuality? Because I wanted to tie around to that when it gets back to my turn.
Yeah, I'm like you, Tom, where if it's like forced gift giving, like I hate that. Like I can never think of the right thing in time, and I wind up like giving a really awkward gift or just a bad gift or just no gift. But like if I think of the right gift, if I think of a gift that I'm excited to give, like I make it happen. Like you can't stop me from getting that thing for that person. Like for example, Tom, in 2019 or something, maybe 2020, I don't know what is time.
The past.
When I was up at your apartment, it became clear that you do not have a way to listen to music when you're just hanging out in your apartment. And so I said, grab your keys. We're going to Best Buy, and I'm getting you a Bluetooth speaker because I know this really great brand and I love this speaker. And this is like going to be your like Christmas and birthday presents all wrapped in together. And I just felt like it was a perfect gift that you really needed. I hope that was true. But that's my like suddenly the gift giving, like kind of the switch flips, and I'm like, this has to happen.
Aaron, don't tell Ryan, but I hated that gift. No,
See,
I was
get to hear the other side of it.
Ryan, this is so funny because I debated bringing that up, but I didn't want to like embarrass you or like put a spotlight on you. So now that you brought it up, I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. Yeah, because that was a great gift because I'm still getting settled. I feel like I've acquired a lot of things at my apartment where I've been living for a year and a half now. But I had lots of holes. I had lots of things I needed to get, from a kitchen table to a couch to chairs and things to put on the wall. So it's been a long process of filling out my apartment. And so, yeah, Ryan was up. I'm pretty sure it was sometime last year that you came to visit. And, and yeah, that was a really meaningful gift because now I can listen to music, and like, I like to put projections on the wall. And so it's nice to like have a movie night and we can actually hear the thing instead of having to like crane our ears to the laptop speaker, which isn't really that effective. So that was a really great gift. I'll give you, huge points for that one.
Tying it to sexuality, I have had a few experiences in the past where I was like really like crushing on a guy and like did the thing where you buy him an awkward gift and like give it awkwardly, and it's like such a letdown because it never means as much to them to receive it as you sort of picture in your head.
Is it kind of manipulative in a sense? I feel like any of these love languages can be manipulative with people, but is that
maybe a little? I felt like mostly it was just I'm trying to express my emotions.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how. And here's a gift, and it's just kind of weird.
And it falls flat. Yeah. The gift thing is the thing that falls the most flat for me. It's like so hit or miss. Like when it's hit and it's great, like, oh, what a great gift. But then when it's a miss, especially with another man, it's like totally different dynamic. If it's because a lot of the friends I reference like are females. Females have given me some amazing gifts over the years, and that's a completely different vibe for me versus if a male gives me the perfect gift, like it's like, again, this like increase of this quotient of love that I feel because of my sexuality, but then the disconnect, that's also really hard to reckon with as well.
Yeah. Like there was this guy I was super stuck on for a while. I wrote a blog article about him, and this is back in like 2015 or something. And I had just discovered Pair of Thieves underwear, and I got so close, like this close to buying him underwear and gifting it to him. And looking back, I am so glad that I didn't do that. Because
I will say,
what's the opposite of like looking back and cringing is like looking back and like the uncringe, like, oh, thank God I didn't.
Yeah. I was like, I'm kind of glad. Well, I am glad that you didn't do that, Ryan. But the content part of me is really like disappointed that you didn't, because what a story you could have shared with us. But I'm glad you didn't either. Ultimately, that was a good call.
I wouldn't be able to enjoy my Pair of Thieves underwear today if I had done it. They'd be ruined.
Yeah. What about you, Aaron? Any gift giving stories, thoughts, perspectives tied to your sexuality?
Great question. I would echo a lot of what you guys said. It's hit or miss. I don't like the general seasonal forced construct of gift giving. I appreciate the gesture. I like getting people gifts, but my problem is I would rather wait for inspiration to strike and get the gift immediately. Because what ends up happening sometimes is it'll be like July and I'll think of the perfect Christmas gift for somebody, or just gift generally, but like I'm waiting now for the reason to give them a gift. And then the actual like holiday comes around or their birthday, and it's either no longer relevant or I've forgotten about it, and I'm back to that stage of like, what do I get this person? Or they just don't need it. So I don't know. It's a tricky one. And I guess I'm not sure how I would tie that one into my sexuality too much, but I would agree getting a gift from a guy, as is probably true with all of these love languages, would feel different than from women. And partly, I think maybe it just comes down to stereotypically, straight guys are not really that great at exhibiting love of any form. So I think getting it from somebody feels really unique and special.
Yeah. I would love to do this podcast with straight men and get what their lineup is, because we're so tilted toward quality time, physical touch in this community. It's like so consistent. Like I've constantly heard about that over the years. And we do these little polls at the retreat where people will enter into the circle if this resonates with them. And so it's always quality time, physical touch. But yeah, last thought I had on gift giving is that I feel like, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. At least from my vantage point, gifts has always felt more of a feminine love language to me. Like I've never had a plethora of men in my life who are really great at giving gifts. And so I think that enters into it a little bit too. It kind of makes me uncomfortable, I guess, if I'm like, do I even want to be good at gift giving? If that's kind of more of a girl's way to express love. Cause girls will get all kinds of elaborate Christmas presents or bachelorette presents or whatever. I don't know. That's just always been something that it's not necessarily a good thing to think, but that's just always kind of the lens that I've had through gifts too, is that it feels more of a feminine thing. And if I'm, pursuing masculinity, then it kind of feels counter to that sometimes. But I want to be known as somebody that, that's a little more honed in, like kind of in the zone. Like if I'm out in a city exploring and I see something in the window that I feel like a friend of mine or a family member would enjoy, like, to be more spontaneous, kind of like you were saying, Aaron, when the moment strikes, to be open to that, because more often than not, I am not. So that's kind of my closing thoughts on gifts. Words of affirmation. This is an interesting one because I'm a writer, and I was actually shocked when the results came in, because if I was ranking my own love languages, just like by my gut, it tied with physical touch. So if I was going to break the tie, the way I would structure my pyramid or my hierarchy of love languages, I would have quality time definitely at the top. I would put words of affirmation number 2, physical touch number 3, and then gifts and acts of service after that. Because I don't know, just as a writer, as someone always constantly playing with words, like I see the power of words. I see the harm in words, but also see the beauty and the uplifting quality of words as well. And so, maybe this goes to my love for memes, like this, like playing with language, like playing with verbal language. Like I think that's just something that I creatively enjoy. And so, yeah, I've been so blessed over the years to people writing like to the PO box. Like I mentioned this on the Zoom line. I joked, I'm not expecting letters to come in the mail, but I did joke on the Zoom call the other week with our yobbers that, yeah, if y'all want to write me a letter and just affirm me, I would love that. I would not be opposed to that. And so many people have written in over the years, whether through the snail mail or through email, and I've been just really blessed by what people have had to say. It means a lot to be encouraged, because I just feel incredibly forgetful. I feel like it's easy for me to forget the encouragement I got this morning, let alone over the course of my life. And so it's really meaningful, especially when other men affirm me. Again, it goes back to that masculinity piece of feeling like I'm an equal, feeling like I'm one of them, feeling like if a man tells me he's proud of me or that he loves me, like that goes a long way, versus not to say that I don't enjoy when a woman tells me that, but again, it hits different. It lands different when a man does. I'm curious with you guys, because it came up in our Zoom call that there were some people who enjoy words of affirmation, but then there are also other people who kind of have an aversion to it. Like it almost feels like if it's pitying language, like if someone is going out of their way to encourage you or to say you're doing a good job or whatever, it almost comes across with a connotation of pitying versus uplifting. And so I'm curious if that applies to you guys at all. If you trust the words that are coming your way, especially from other men, as we look at this through the lens of our sexuality.
I think there's certainly like words of affirmation that feel empty and then therefore they're meaningless, if that's what they're talking about. But I guess like words of affirmation and quality of time, we're kind of getting into the region of love languages where it's like, okay, who doesn't like to receive words of affirmation from someone they love? Who doesn't? Who's going to say, "Oh, I love this person a lot. I just don't like to spend time with them."
I would say, I'm not going to call him out, but I kind of am. He likes to be called out. I think Matthew is somebody who would not put words of affirmation too high on his list. I think Matthew would much rather, Matthew, call the Yobline, get your perspective on the love languages. But I think he more prefers to do things with guys and humans in general. I don't think he necessarily needs to be told, "I love you. You're doing a good job, sweetie." Like, keep going. I don't think that lands with him, as just on his personality and what I know of him.
But it feels like there's a difference between the words not meaning anything and actually like actively upsetting you in some way, or feeling like you're being patronized. Or
I think a lot of it is just our experiences. Yeah. Like, I don't know, like, especially when we get to physical touch, like we get into the realm of abuse maybe, and people are have an aversion to physical touch based on that part of their stories. And I think words of affirmation can have a similar effect of, like, if you have a difficult experience with people encouraging you over the years, or their words didn't hold up, a lot of betrayal in friendship, like, I think that can be a sore spot for a lot of people, that they don't trust the words. There's not a weight there. Like, show me the actions behind the words. And maybe acts of service are higher for those types of people. I don't know.
Yeah, I know for my brother, I was talking to him a little bit about this the other day, and he is straight. So there you go, bringing a straight perspective for a minute.
Good.
He made the comment, like, talk is cheap, and prove it with your actions. So prove it with quality time and things like that, rather than just saying the right things per se. So it depends, though, I think, how your past has been with words. I think, like you said, whether you've had a history of the person telling you things and it being meaningful, or them maybe breaking that trust.
Now that we're talking more about words of affirmation, it occurs to me that, like, I don't care a whole lot about kind of generic words of affirmation, like, "Oh, you're doing great," or "You look great." I think what I think about, like, for words of affirmation that really impact me emotionally is very specific things, like, "Oh, here's something that I admire about you. Let me tell you the story of how it helped me or changed my life or impacted me." So I think, like, it kind of, maybe it's the difference between, like, a handshake, physical touch, versus like a hug or something more.
Yeah,
like,
there's
deeper,
degrees.
meaningful.
There's degrees to all of these love languages. So I'm glad you hit on that. Last thing I want to point out with words of affirmation: how do you guys feel when a man says, "I love you"? Is that awkward? Is that hard to receive?
Oh, I love it. I think it used to feel awkward, maybe, but not anymore.
And I could clarify, men in general, or men within Yob or the side B world, like, there's probably maybe different ways you might react to
any man at all. The Trader Joe's cashier, when he says "I love you" every time I check out, I say, "I know."
I know. The Han Solo approach. Yeah. What about you, Aaron? How do you field those three words? Because those are powerful words, but people receive them in very different ways.
Yeah, I like it as well. I think I generally receive it pretty well. It may depend a little bit who's saying it, and if it feels like, there's some sort of ulterior motive or what they're trying to imply with it. But generally speaking, I just think it's lovely. It's nice. It's nice to have somebody say that and express it verbally, rather than just like assuming that
I think, and then there's an affirmation that I like to hear even more, which is "I like you." Like, if someone says "I like you," and I know they mean it, that's even more meaningful to me.
Yeah.
No pressure.
I'm gonna close the episode by saying I love / like each of you. That's hold me to it. Let's get to the big two, you guys. So quality time. I don't want to, like, mush these together, but I'm just saying the last two, physical touch, quality time, those are the ones that I figured was kind of where the train was going. So I guess you guys outnumber me with physical touch, so we'll go to quality time next. Why do you think let's just cut to the chase. Why do you think so many people want quality time in this community? What is that? We'll ask the same question with physical touch, but what is it about quality time that we are all craving, like to such a lopsided, tilted degree?
I think it represents intimacy, and it's kind of a venue for intimacy in a way that, say, like gifts or acts of service aren't really.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I think intimacy is mediated through that quality time together and through physical touch.
I think time is one of our most valuable resources these days with the way the world is. And it's easy perhaps to be quick with giving a gift or sending like a Facebook message virtually or whatever it is. But having somebody actually carve out time from their busy schedule and spend it with you, to me, demonstrates they must like you and love you in order to choose to do that and take the time out of their day.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think I'll just speak for myself. The reason it's so high, why it's the highest on my list, is that I just feel, how fleeting time is. And when it's connected with my sexuality and like time that I want to spend with other men, I feel like I'm almost having to catch up on all the time that I didn't have as a kid. Like when I was growing up, I didn't spend time with the other boys. I just didn't have that. I didn't have that growing up, like a lot of other people do inside this community and out. And so there's this sense that I'm almost feeling like I'm still, like, if I had to add up all the hours I've spent with men, I'm still only at 17 years old. Like, these kids were always doing on sports teams together or sleepovers or whatever. And I didn't have a lot of that growing up. And so I think that's a huge part of the reason why it resonates so high with me, is that I just, there is this sense that, okay, now I've done a lot of work, done a lot of growth over the years, and now I can enjoy quality time in a way that I never was able to as a teenager. And so that's a huge one for me. When I tie this to my sexuality, and I love spending time with women too. It's kind of, actually, Will Cooper wrote a really meaningful blog post recently, as of this recording, about how a lot of guys in this community, we kind of have a lopsided relationship with men and women, and need more women in our lives. And I feel that conviction in my life that I need more time spent with women as well, to kind of, like, I just want to spend time ultimately with all different types of people. I don't want to just gravitate toward just men or just SSA gay men or just whatever, I want to try to connect with as many people as possible and spend as much time with as many people as possible. And that's something that I've just kind of realized how I'm wired these last few years.
Here's a question for you, Tom, since you're pretty high in the quality time. What makes time, like one-on-one time, what makes one-on-one time quality one-on-one time, and not like, I mean, what, like, I guess help me understand what does the quality mean there?
This is something I've thought about over the years, because there's the generalized stereotype that women connect in the being and men connect in the doing. Or to put that in a diagram, women connect sitting across from each other, men connect side by side. And so what that means is, a lot of times men, they'll connect. They bond by doing things together, whether it's working out together, going on hikes, or playing basketball, or whatever. There's a lot of doing, or watching the big game. Even watching a game, you're sitting side by side on a couch, right? And so versus women, who maybe are more like, they look at each other, they sit across from each other, they talk. It's not to say that men don't talk, but that's definitely something that I've resonated with ever since I wrote my first book. I started all of a sudden having these encounters, these coffee shop encounters with my readers. And now that Yob has become a thing, like, during non-pandemic years, it seems like every month I'm connecting with a reader in some part of the country and connecting across from a coffee shop, or even just reading emails. Like, I'm across from them, in a sense that I'm across from them, and I'm more existing in the being, and sharing my story, hearing theirs. And that's extremely meaningful for me. And I don't want to necessarily lessen that, but I also want to recognize that other men who are also high in quality time, maybe they're more wired toward the doing side of quality time versus the being. And that's something that I want to do. I kind of want to up my game a little bit, as far as being open to something that might be out of my comfort zone. I might like the quality time just in general, just being around a man, being around a group of men. But just because my comfort zone is to sit across from them at a coffee shop or at a dinner, and theirs is something else entirely. Like I want to be able to reciprocate better with depending on the type of man, and how they bond, whether in the being or the doing. So that'd be my answer. My long-winded answer to that is like, yeah, my number one go-to, love deep, meaningful conversation. I think that hits on a lot of my fourness. Going back to Enneagram, I just love, like, let's cut through the shallow end. Let's get straight to the deep end. Let's figure out why we are the way they are, what hurts us and what makes us tick. And I live for that type of interaction with my fellow man. But yeah, I want to bond in the doing too. And so it doesn't have to be all heavy and serious all the time. I'm learning to lighten up. I need to lighten up. Yeah.
I will say, I feel like my most successful quality time with you, Tom, has been in doing things together, like the hiking or watching things together.
Well, that's encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed doing things with you. Yeah. We had some good times in Montana, and we watched this really weird cartoon marathon. I forget what that show was called. It was really
Over
fun.
the Garden Wall.
Yeah.
I made Aaron watch that too. And
you
so,
bonded in the quality
I've had
time.
that quality time
good
experience
stuff.
with both of you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just special to you, Tom. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, that was meaningful quality time. I enjoyed that. Yeah. Well, that's encouraging. Yeah, I feel insecure that I don't bond enough in the doing, that it's too much being, and so that's encouraging to me, actually, that you shared that. Any closing thoughts on quality time?
I think one more comment on the quality portion is, I find that if I'm doing something that feels like work to me with somebody, that usually counts less as quality time. So like, my roommate Joseph, we bought our house together and stuff recently. And for him, he's very much a high introvert. I'm kind of an ambivert, a little bit in the middle, but quality time is pretty high for me as well. And so quality time is important. And one of the issues we had was we would spend hours together trying to figure out paperwork and get stuff ready for moving into a house and blah, 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 picking up furniture. And then I'd be like, all right, so let's go hang out and do something. He's like, I need to just go be alone, like in my room.
He's like, we just did. What are you talking about?
Right. Yeah. Just sitting there going, well,
Yeah.
what were the several hours we just spent? And so I think for me, the quality part is like, I want to be doing something I enjoy with people that I enjoy, whether that's deep conversation or just playing video games or being outside. Like, that's more what I like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. There's like such a spectrum on what do people qualify as quality time, the being, the doing, and then even in the doing, like if it's more work or task oriented versus recreational, like that, there's a difference in that too. And some people I love that example because like from his vantage point, his cup overflows. Like he just had this all this time with you, and then for you, you're like, wait, that's it now.
Right,
so
exactly.
We're all wired differently, and it's fun to see, how these all coalesce. Let's close the combo, you guys, with physical touch. This is the big one. This is the rallying cry of the Your Other Brothers community. Love language. How does physical touch and sexuality, how do those intermingle with you guys?
I think part of the issue with physical touch, maybe as a conversation and topic, is that a lot of times this is the one that people most readily go, well, you're attracted to men. Of course, you want to cuddle with them. Like, there's nothing more to it than your sexual desires, and you're just looking for as much sexual intimacy as you can get, that kind of thing. And I think that can be the case, certainly. But I think by and large, that isn't the case. And so it's kind of, how do you weed out what's somehow connected to attraction, what isn't, and the different types of attraction? How do you navigate that safely? And those sorts of things can be pretty difficult to weed through.
Yeah, my desire for physical touch is certainly correlated with my sexuality, because that the touch that I want is like, my desires are gendered, right? Like I want touch from men. I don't really care that much about touch from women. And so, yeah, it is sort of like awkward to try to explain that to somebody who hasn't really like done a lot of the thought about the nuances of sexuality and how sexuality plays out. And so I use the word correlated. My desires are correlated to my sexuality because I don't know what the causality there is. Like, if you're familiar with this, like the correlation causation, like fallacy, like just because two things are correlated doesn't mean you can say one causes the other. And so I don't think that, I just don't know, does my desire for physical touch from men, does that cause in me a desire for sexual encounters with men? Or does my desire for sexual encounters with men, does that somehow like give me this desire for physical touch or cuddling because that's what I feel like I can allow myself to do? So I don't think it's useful to sort of agonize over all that. I think that but I think it is helpful to recognize that, yes, my desire for physical touch, my experience of physical touch is, it does touch my sexuality in a lot of ways. It has a lot to do with my sexuality, but I don't think that that's the kind of immediate, like, concerning red flag that that a lot of people on the outside of this conversation tend to sort of zero in on.
Yeah. I have a couple stories that connect with physical touch. The first one was the first time I was living with people as an adult. This is actually the first time I ever got introduced to the love languages, what those even were, because they were all about surprise. They were all about personality tests and learning why we are the way they are. And so they'd mentioned this love language thing. And so there were people that I was living with, but then also all of their friends. And so there must have been like 10 or 15 of us in a living room. And we were all taking, like, one at a time, I think sharing a laptop. We were all taking turns, like taking the love languages quiz. I don't think it was officially a Gary Chap quiz. I think it was some other one out there. There's probably a million of them out there. But the vibe of the room was, this was a very touchy-feely group, and everyone was scoring really high on physical touch. And up until that point, like, I was 23 years old. Like, I didn't really have a whole lot of physical touch, certainly not with other men. And so I almost felt like this pressure to answer the questions in such a way that my physical touch score would score high, because I didn't want to be the one person that was like low in physical touch and feel excluded, because I definitely wanted it. I just didn't know how much I wanted it. It was such a big question mark, such a big unknown for me at the time. And so I answered the questions the way I felt pressured to, and scored high along with everyone else. And we were all, I think we probably literally did a group hug or something after that. So physical touch, a palooza in that living room. And then it goes a couple years later, or it might have been a year later, that I was working in a ministry one summer, and the subject of love languages came up, and we were talking about how we could all, this small team of 5 people, how we could all like minister to one another. Like, how are you wired? How am I wired? And up until that point, then I started to experience physical touch. I actually verbalized it to the team, which was male and female, but kind of looking more at the male in the room and being like, yeah, physical touch for me is definitely the most. And he asked me, because he's a straight guy, and he asked me, so what does that mean? What does that look like for you? Do you just love hugs? Do you love a pat on the back? Like, what do you like? And in my head, I'm just like, yes, all of it. Like, just touch me as much as you can.
Whatever you'll give me.
Whatever you'll give me. Please just touch me. And that's, to this day, some of the most meaningful touch I've ever had. I've blogged about this guy and the experiences that we've had, because I remember one time that I shared my sexuality with him. I told him the story, and he hugged me 3 times, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times as we walked around a park. And then at the end of that, we sat on a bench next to each other, and he put his hand on my back and prayed over me. And that's some of the most meaningful, like, the mixture of quality time and words of affirmation and physical touch. Like, that's some of the most like potent combination of love languages as far as this conversation goes that I've ever had in my life, because a lot of it was just so fresh and so new. I had never had like conversations like that with other people before, other interactions like that with other people before. And so I feel like it's like this elixir. Like, I feel this thing, like physical touch with men, like, does something to me. It has this like power to it that other men don't have. And the flip side of that, we don't have time for this this will be a whole nother podcast one day, but the dark side of physical touch for me is really just like that's kind of the other side of how potent and how powerful it is. Like I've had a lot of negative experiences with physical touch, and this came up a little bit during our Zoom room, and I really appreciated the guys who shared really vulnerably sharing about stories of abuse or just sharing about boundaries being crossed and how physical touch, it's like, yeah, it's really great when it's great, and it's really not great when it's not great. And so that's why I kind of feel like my physical touch score over the years is like, I think it's definitely been higher in the past, and now I kind of hold this quality time more as like the baseline of like what I'm personally what personally stirs the most in me. But physical touch, not to say I'm like repulsed by touch anymore, but it lands differently, I guess, with an accumulation of life experiences, with boundaries being crossed, with just kind of unfortunate experiences I've shared with other men and memories that it triggers. Like I think that is a huge reason why it's kind of more of a middle of the road love language for me now versus where it was in the past. And of all five, I mean, sexuality, this is the one that's like most clear. I can point to reasons how my sexuality affects and correlates, mixes with this love language compared to the other four.
Yeah. And on that topic of how powerful it is, like I've said this to a friend before, like the weight of my heart is through my skin. And so I think that like, we do have to like guard that, and back to what you said about love languages, maybe sometimes being manipulative. Like they're meant to express something that already exists. They're not meant to sort of like, create love, I guess. And so one of my anxieties about recording this podcast episode is that people who I don't know very well are going to listen to it and think, oh, Ryan loves physical touch. And people I don't, I'm going to meet people and they're going to be like all touchy and all up on me. And when like this, I'm talking about with people that I like know well and love and have deep affection for. So I guess to kind of generalize that for like the whole topic, like when you find out somebody likes, say, physical touch, like that's not suddenly like a good reason to start giving them a bunch of it, or even gifts. You have to be kind of it's wise to be circumspect about like what's the right thing to be giving right now, or what's the right thing to be expecting even.
Yeah, I love how you put it. The love language already manifests what's there. It's not like trying to force this thing to happen. Like that's a really beautiful way, succinct way to put it. I think there have been times where I've tried to, I'm just going to use the word manipulate. I've manipulated primarily men with these 5 love languages. Like I probably point to examples amongst all of them, but primarily with, I think physical touch is a huge one. Like trying to use this one in particular to force something that isn't there, that it's not ready to be there. And I wrestle with that dichotomy of like wanting to tell somebody what I need, like just telling them like, I need this X, Y, and Z. And then wondering how genuine it is. Cause that came up in our call too. It's like, is it genuine to tell people that you really need a hug and then they give it, versus like hoping that they just have ESPN and they just like know inherently to give you a hug or whatever, a gift or what have you. There's a lot of guys I think that, and I wrestle with that too, of just like how do I verbalize what I want, and how do I, but then when I get it, does it feel cheapened? Does it not feel as authentic as it would have been if they could read my mind, read my heart, and know that inherently? Like there's a balance there with that.
Yeah, that's hard. And I think some of it is, okay, if I tell them I need a hug and they give me a hug and then they don't ever give me a hug again, like that feels pretty cheap. But if they think, like if they remember and continue to give me the hug going forward, then in some ways that shows that they cared enough to try to correct things and like go out of their way to give you the love that maybe they don't naturally just express.
That was one of the questions. I don't know if you guys remember that on the Gary Chap quiz. I think one of the ones was like knowing that a friend is using a love language that doesn't come naturally to them, or something to that effect. And I selected that one over whatever the other one was, because like, that's meaningful to me. If someone who isn't particularly prone to physical touch or words of affirmation or whatever, they know that it lands with me and that they give that to me, like that is extremely meaningful, that they would go out of their way to do something that comes, it doesn't come as easily to them. Over the years, I've used many friends, manipulated them, the brutal truth of it all, with the 5 love languages. None more so than one particular friend that I think I may have used all of them, all in an effort to gain something for myself. And I recognize in relationship, in friendship, to some extent, we're all giving in order to get on some base human level. We're social creatures, after all. We need to be connected. It's for our betterment, for our growth. This one particular friend, though, I can see myself extending love to him across the board in all these areas, all in an effort to get something, to have someone with a best friend label, someone I can spend literally every day with, someone who gives me a sense of security without me necessarily giving that back to him, where he's at, what he's going through. In the realm of quality time, I'd schedule trips to visit him, trips to have him visit me, constantly planning time together, feeling deprived, feeling an utter sense of loss when we were apart. In the realm of service, I'd drive him around, take him places, drop everything I was doing in order to be there, to win points, to be known as somebody that he could count on. A noble endeavor, maybe, but something that I certainly wouldn't offer other friends in my life. My undivided attention with no regard for my own self-care, things I had going on, things I needed to do. He shared some of the most meaningful words of affirmation for me, and we exchanged some meaningful gifts over the years. But perhaps the realm of physical touch is the one that stands out the most, the one I wince hardest at when I think back on this particular friendship. Because along with our quality time spent together, any time separated from his skin was demoralizing, defeating. I craved it, and the more I got, the more I craved. The unhealthier it grew, spiraling into something that I couldn't control anymore. I'd literally lie in bed at night thinking about when I could touch him again, when I could have that control in my life where I wasn't sleeping alone, separated. I just wanted to control every aspect of the relationship in hopes that he would change into the person I wanted him to be, rather than be present with what he was. In Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, he beautifully lays out what love is and what love isn't. And we hear this passage often read at weddings and other maybe more romantic settings, but truly, Paul's words about love apply across the board to people who are married and to people who are not, for single people, for friends. And I want so badly to epitomize the kind of love that Paul writes about here, to be known for that kind of love. It's my hope that friendships failed and friendships still going can point to the true form, the true representation of all love, to Jesus. The ESV version of 1 Corinthians 13 reads as follows: "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, they will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abide, these three. But the greatest of these is love. And so, my brothers, you who love well through touch, and you who love through time, you who love through words and service, through giving presents and sharing presents, however we give our love, may it ever be given genuinely, insisting nothing of its own way. And God grant us this same love in return, true love from brothers and sisters, young and old, single, married, across every season of our lives, through this very season, sharing a love born from before the beginning of all time, a love that continues through the ages, persists through you and me and on into 1,000 tomorrows. Love that never ends. Ryan and Aaron, this was awesome. Thank you guys for coming on and sharing some stories. I loved this conversation. It was good to learn about each of you guys as my friends, as someone that I express love with. I love and like each of you.
Aw, thanks.
You too.
That was
And
completely unprompted and unscripted.
I came here today completely planning to say that. Not prompted by anyone's thoughts earlier. Yeah, no. But it does flow from something that hopefully you guys feel is already established. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for talking with me today, as always. And thank you guys out there for listening. Where did the love languages land with you guys? What's your favorite, so to speak? Or your primary, I guess that's the better way to say it. What's your primary love language? Which one doesn't really land with you as easily as the others? Would love to hear that. And then if you have any thoughts beyond what we shared, how these love languages tie into your sexuality, I feel like there's a lot of interesting tangents that this conversation could go. So I would love to hear as many perspectives as possible. Just go over to our podcast episode page, yourotherbrothers.com/podcast. Look for the episode 79 post on love languages and sexuality and share your story. If you want to take the test and you can have the same percentages that we shared on the show to be consistent, I would love to hear, how you guys land. Shocker of all shockers. If you're in the minority with gifts, with acts of service, I would love to hear your perspective as well. Or if you're a run-of-the-mill physical touch boy, we would love to hear from you as well. Everyone is welcome at this table. And a big shout out to our 6th love language, memes, because again, I honestly think sense of humor is another love language. That is something that I would put that in my solid number 2, honestly. So thank you for memes, for bringing some hilarity, for connecting the world through your depictions of images and words at just the right time. We'll be back soon with something, either a YOBcast, a YOBcast. Stay tuned. Something's coming next week. I don't know. We're still picking up the pieces, shuffling things around. But yeah, we'll be back soon with another fantastic episode, maybe a Ryan rant about the love languages. Who knows? Stay tuned for whatever is to come. In the meantime, for all your other brothers, my name is Tom.
I'm Aaron.
And this is Ryan.
Reminding you that you are not alone. Even the sparrow finds a home. See you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Your Other Brothers podcast. Our show is edited and produced by Thomas Mark Zuniga. Theme music is Fear Is Not My Lover by Nathan Rousseau. We'd love to hear your story. Comment on this or any of our episodes at yourotherbrothers.com/podcast, or share a story to play back on our show by calling us at 706-389-8009. You can also email us at podcast@yourotherbrothers.com or write to us at Your Other Brothers, P.O. Box 843, Asheville, North Carolina 28802. If you enjoy our show, consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Your Other Bros. Finally, if you'd like to further support our storytelling, community building efforts, consider becoming a Yobber. Yobbers pledge monthly on Patreon and receive perks like bonus podcast content, access to a secret Facebook group, regular group calls with fellow patrons and authors, and more. Visit patreon.com/yourotherbros for more information. Until we journey next time, we're glad you're with us.